This is Andy's DIY. I'm showing an aftermarket fairing installation on a 2008 Triumph Daytona 675 triple. You start with the front upper cowl or fairing first, and then you go to the sides. So we'll start with that now. As you go to put this on, you're going to see two screw holes. Obviously you took it off, so you probably remember how to put it on, but these two screw holes, you got this one here, you got one here, and then you got this little tab right here in the middle. You see this little tab right here. Be careful, that little tab is supposed to go into this little hole right here in between the headlights. So you want to slide it straight on first, put the tab right into this little hole here, and then these little screws right here will bolt to the bottom of the lighting assembly. Right, there's one on this side, one on the other side over here, and then you've got the upper holes right here that bolt to your that bolt right here and here off your light. So they both, this whole fairing assembly bolts to the light. This part of the light, the bottom part of the light. So that's what holds the front fairing on. Okay, so I'm back here. Struggled a little bit, but everything lines up like it should. Put the four screws in. You got to kind of move it around to get them lined up, but leave them kind of loose until you get these top ones in. But don't tighten anything up yet because you got to get this guy in. Again, for you guys that took yours apart, I took mine apart so long ago I had to kind of feel my way back through it again. But you want to slide it under your upper fairing here. Slide it under here. And just kind of work it down in place. This is not the windshield that came with mine. Mine had the little bubbles in it. I didn't really care for that, so I bought a different one. I like more of the factory look. At this point, once I get this in place, the windshield's in place, I'll go ahead and tighten down. I'll put a couple of these in, and I'll tighten all four of my screws down so I can tighten the upper fairing down to the windshield. Once you have those four fairing screws in on the front, you know, they're semi-tight, but not all the way. Everything should start lining up in mine. Show you how mine lines up here. All my holes are lining up pretty nice. You know, I'll bring all this in as I tighten it up. Everything lines up here, and you can see it's lining up over here. So this fairing kit's lining up pretty well for now. So you kind of bring this windshield in with it, line everything up. The key is getting all this stuff on before you put all these little ones in here, these little fairing screws in. Get it all all the screws in place, and then as you start to put the other screws in, you can tighten everything up at one time. I think that's what makes it a little easier. Somebody may have a different method, but from what I can see, that's the easiest way to do it. If you get these four screws down here too tight, you're not going to be able to get this windshield in without wrestling with it. Now the reason why I went aftermarket with mine, this is what color this bike originally was, the neon blue. You can see what happened with this one here. Most of the damage on this one was contained mainly just to this part of the fairing. You see what broke off here. Here's the original fairing stay, which broken off all on this side like this. When I went to the dealers around me about, you know, ordering this, wanted to stay all Triumph, keep it all original, all that kind of stuff, I was asking about colors. They said this just apparently wasn't that popular of a color. As far as I'm looking to resell the bike, I'm not looking to keep it. My skins on mine, as far as I'm calling them skins, this piece of plastic and the other side, they're all in great shape. Whoever buys the bike, if they're not interested in them, I'm going to just sell them. But here's one of them here, and the other one it's got just a couple small little scratches on it. But the skin, both sides are good on mine. So to put this back blue, all I'd have to do is just paint the cowl. I've got the tank at the paint shop now being painted black. I had to buy a screw set, a fairing screw set, which I bought here. UIG, Pug, whatever it says. Had this kit. It wasn't too bad, about $10. $10–12 for a set of these screws here. I had my old ones, but 3 or 4 of them stripped out and broke because they're only plastic. So, but I'm gonna go and start lining these up and start pulling the windshield all together and getting it all snugged in tight like that.
It can be a pain in the butt. I think you probably need to put the windshield and go ahead and put these on, because what happens is you can't get to the nuts. You know, I forgot the fairing stay stopped right here, and and so you really can't. You can get to them, but you can kind of stick your finger on them. So what I did, I didn't want to take the whole thing back off and put these screws in, because ideally, when you're bringing this whole fairing on, if you will put these two in, and get them, reasonably tight, and then let these kind of widen out a little bit, and then you can kind of coax it into place, because you got to put these through the fairing stay, these two right here. That you won't have that issue. But if you forget and do it, you can take a piece of tape and wrap it around your finger. Let me show you here. Yeah, my son actually came up with this idea, but he just said just to stick some. I ended up using these, and I went in there with these long pliers here, like so, and you have to come into here, and I just had to fumble with it some. I got it at the right angle. I got it all the way in there, and it took a minute to get it all. Once you get it threaded, then it's no problem. But he talked about, why don't I just stick tape on my finger, which actually is a pretty smart idea, because you can touch where you want to go. You just can't get your fingers in there. You can stick that on the tape and stick your finger all the way in. You can kind of reach that side. It's not so bad. This is the worst side. But yeah, just get you some tape on there. Tape one way, and then I taped it the opposite way so it wouldn't slide. And you can stick it on in and get it lined up how you want it. And you can run your finger all the way up to it. So that's kind of a cool idea. But ideally, if you get this thing connected with these lower two screws on the fairing, before you slide it on, you won't have to deal with that. So that's something to help you there with your trouble. It's pretty hard to see it. It's a decent paint job. But right in here, there's like a little, it's a small little bit of a, looks like a run here. But I mean, honestly, from 2 feet away, it's hard to even notice it. But the fit is really nice. I mean, everything lines up with the factory holes. This is just the windshield here. I'm painting several videos out on this thing went down, so of course I'm painting this. I'm waiting on the spray paint to come in. Okay, the biggest difference I can see with these kits, here's the factory piece. You can see here, it looks good on it. Is it real flexible? I mean, is it real bendy? Show you the difference here with this. This is what I'm putting on it. Looks all nice, shiny stuff, but it's flexible, but it's just not quite. It does have flex, but it's a little stiffer. One of the other video guys, weighed the pieces, and these all weigh out a little bit more. But what you lose, this side, I've already had all the pieces on, so I know they fit real nice. The problem with putting them on, you can see what I had to add to it. This is the factory heat shielding right here, and I copied it, just laid it in here, but I've been hearing issues with potential for it to, the pieces to melt or get too hot. So I'm assuming because they don't flex as far maybe, so I added extra heat shielding, but here's the way it came from the factory. And I bought a roll of this heat tape for like $12, so I thought I'll just go ahead and do it all the way up. I'm going to do the other side too. I've got extra tape on mine as well, that way I have to make sure that I'm covered. But this is the main side, because it's the exhaust side. But that's the difference you're going to get with not going with the aftermarket. We're not going with the factory, is that the fits, it's not as flexible, and it just doesn't want to, it doesn't snug in as good. Because it's stiffer. The plastic's a little stiffer. This bracket here, this aftermarket deal, made to go on here. It works great with the original stuff, but because these aren't as flexible, it hits right here, right along this part of the brace. If that wasn't there, this thing would slide in tighter. But you can look at the thickness of this, the thickness right here, and see that's what's causing it to want to stay out about that much with the stiffer fairing. So what I did, I just went in here, took this bracket back off, and I kind of ground this down a little bit, just enough where I wouldn't take some of the structural support out of it, but just enough with this. It's still catching a little bit, but it actually allows it to sit snugger, more snug there. Also, I had to take, it's hard to see it, but this was starting to hit right on top of the fairing there, so I just got a grinder and just grinded a small little bit of a chunk out, just a little bit. You can't tell it because it's on there and it's overlapping. That way it's not pushing down on the fairing itself. So that gave it the slack it needed to squeeze in there tighter.
Oh, your set's gonna come with a bunch of extra screws, this fairing kit, and aside from maybe what one of these would have went to, only one of these was in my kit, which I reused all the hardware from my original fairing set. Most of the stuff I can't even tell what it would have gone to, so I think this is just to another, just like a universal screw set, but I didn't use any of it. So I'm not really sure what they had in mind, but these screws don't fit my bike.
If you look at the sticker,
It's not like it's a deal break, but this is the sticker that goes on the right side of the bike, the brake hand side of the bike. And this is, like I say, the right side of the sticker. See how that's, the 675 should start right here. If you flip it around, it would be correct. So this is the right side of the sticker, which, you know, granted, I mean, I know because I've been staring at it, and other people not familiar with it wouldn't really notice it. So fitment on this side, again, it's not bad. It's not quite as tight as the other because, like I say, this plastic just doesn't flex as well, so it puts a lot of, you know, you got to do a lot of, not bending, but you got to kind of start. I actually, when I say start here, you still need to hang. You want to put this rear screw in here just kind of loosely, but get that one in, so you've got some support back here, just so it's holding the tail part. When I fish mine in because I don't have the little service stand for the back tire. But then you get these in, and when you get these in kind of tight, then you slowly start to work this thing in. I've got a little bit of this thing, like with the other side, there's a little bit of catching on this, but not so bad because I don't have the high clip like that other side does, so it's not an issue. But it's not such a problem with this side, but it catches it just a little bit here. And there's no problem with this little part here. But if you don't have these on your bike, this fairing set fit great on this bike. No real issues. The only other thing is, the last thing I can say about the fitment, other than it looking pretty good, you know, you can see my tank came out pretty well. I just went to a local painter. Here, this is the original Triumph one off the bike. Because these panels are a little stiffer, this doesn't fit up as snug as like I'd like it. It should sit in there like that, so you don't see that little daylight gap right there. And granted, I mean, unless you're just picking the bike to death, you wouldn't really notice. But what I'm going to do to fix that, and I'll show you how this one's finished, I went ahead and I bought some of this. Let's see here. I bought this at Lowe's, Home Depot, I think any place will have it. This weather seal you'd use for like a door, window, whatever. I feel like I'll have more use for it. It's like 20 bucks, which they're proud of it. You know, I already used what I needed, and I obviously didn't use that much. Well, this is the aftermarket piece. So what I did was I took this thing and just cut it to fit. You can see how I kind of doubled it up. And I'll trim it on the bottom. You see how the rubber's kind of flexing out right there. But here's where it stops, right there. And so I added this lip on this, so when I put this in here, it should just kind of seal it up nice. We don't have that daylight around it, but that's basically what I did to fix that, because it's not really I didn't want to put any kind of caulk in there because it needs to be able to be taken off to be serviced when you have to do the oil changes. But that's what I did, just to thicken that up a little bit. But that's really the only thing that didn't fit where I'm having to modify is this little, I don't know what it's called, but it mounts right there in front of the radiator. So I'll put that on. Let's see how that looks. All right, so here's that finished with that piece on there. You can see it's kind of hard to tell, which is good. So here's this rubber piece I put in here. Yeah, and it only needed to come in about just that much. I still want to see daylight in there, but I just kind of put that around there, and it's flexible. So you see it'll flex with the bike, so at least it covers that little gap there. So that's what I did. The only fitment problem I had again was this right in here, and it's just because this plastic is just a little stiffer. But if you look up under here, it's fit up. All the pieces fit nicely.
These all holes lined up nicely. I didn't notice I was going to have an issue until I started to mate it up with the fairing. That's when it started. I was talking about mounting it from the back first. You really want to leave them all out and get these guys in first, and then just kind of slowly work the fairing back into place. If you don't have these things on here, this thing will go on really easy. These run into a little bit of issue there, but that was not a big problem there. I upgraded to the newer ones of these. I'm going to have to put the flashing relay on the other side, which is pretty easy. There's a video on that. I did note one slight difference in these. These are the, I guess, the console panels, whatever you call it, off the top of the fairing. This is the original right here, and this is the aftermarket. And you can see they're just a little different. They line up the same here, but they're just slightly different. Not much, but mainly up in here. I'm going to go back. Here's the original one here. This one I like because it hooks behind the headlight. But I had this one on here thinking they were the same, but I'm going to go ahead and put the original one back on it. But that's the only difference, is just a little bit right here. Other than that, everything else has been exactly the same.
Otherwise, just let you look at the fitment of this setup here. All the bolt holes are in the right place, down here and here, underneath here. This seat mounted up nice, no issues there. Here's the other side, same issue here. This the plastic rides a little bit here, and on the factory stuff it's a little bit more flexible around this, where this is a little stiffer. It just tends to make it want to, not close in down here as much. But other than that, this thing's good fitment on it. One thing I will comment about, here's the other seam here. Pretty decent here. A little bit of a gap, but otherwise not that noticeable. The paint is not, you can get up on it, you could find drips and stuff places where it's not perfect. But from where I'm videoing this away, it looks perfect. So the paint's decent. If you want a nice job, maybe recommend getting getting the skins unpainted, and then just take it to your painter. Most guys around where I live charge $5.50 to do a complete paint, tank, and plastic and all. My kit even came with a windshield. It also came with this tank guard right here. So I was happy with mine. I ordered mine through a company called DH Gate. I will say, if you have issues with it, I wanted to have a couple pieces touched up, like maybe replace it, and I think that you're going to hear crickets on that. So it is kind of a, getting turned around. I can't really vouch for them on that, but all in all, I think they did a pretty good job with mine.